Perfect, thank you. So welcome everyone to our session. This is the kickoff of the Harmonized Terminologies and Schemas for Fair Data in Material Science and Related Domains Working Group kickoff. So as you noticed, this session is being recorded, and the recordings will be shared, I think, a week after the plenary. And we adhere to the code of conduct of RTA, which will be popping into the chat. We've also prepared some collaborative notes, so please feel free to have a look. I'll also pop the link in the chat shortly. So with this, I would like to give the floor to Gerhard Kolbeck, co-chair of this working group, to start us off. Many thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much, Athena, and thank you for participating today in our session. This is really very exciting because it's a kickoff meeting of a new working group, which we have been preparing with a lot of input from the co-chairs who are also here today, and also with a lot of input from the field. So this is the Harmonized Terminologies and Schemas for Fair Data in Materials Science and Related Domains Working Group. And the co-chairs with me are Zachary Trout from the US, from NIST, Isolde Lynch from the UK, from Birmingham, Liam McLean from Cornell, and Ayub Haq in the US, Masashi Ishii from NIMS, I believe, in Japan, and he's also here, yeah, and Kwang Ro Lee from Korea, and he's also here on the line. So thank you so much for the RDA Tiger support. Ryan O'Connor isn't here, I think, but he's done a lot of work with us. And Athena is now joining us and supporting us very much in this effort that made all the difference, really, in getting this working group off the ground. But of course, also the RDA, which was founded now more than 10 years ago. Not very long ago, we had the anniversary celebrations in Gothenburg, I believe it was. But this field is also being represented for quite some time already, since 2014, for example, with the Materials Data and Infrastructure Interoperability interest group that was founded then. And the chemistry field is also very important here in this context, that had an interest group since 2016. And the first working group that is really also a key background to what we're doing here was the working group in the materials resource registries, but that was founded in 2016 and published its recommendations that are still very important, include, for example, also vocabulary in a SCOS format for materials, and that was and the recommendations for this resources was published in 2021. Then came two birds of a feather sessions, one on the metadata for data indexing and data discovery in material science and engineering, and then the recent one, which is really very closely already on the topic of now the new working group, was in the plenary 20 in Gothenburg, and the data representation materials and chemicals based on harmonized domain ontologies. We had some more presentations of this topic in interest group sessions at the last plenary, and now we've had the case statement approved by the technical advisory board, and we're ready to start. So in this session, which is the first of two sessions in this virtual plenary, we are going to present very, very briefly now the group activities and what we are planning to do, but also you have a link in the collaborative notes. I believe it's at the top. When you have a look, there is the case statement I'll just briefly show it here. There's a link here to the case statement, which I would also invite you to open up for reference, and there you have all of the details of information. Of course, I can't go in this session through all of that in a lot of detail in the presentation slides, but I will, highlight the main points, of course, in a minute. We will present some of the preparatory initial work, and this is now the start of the discussion for that. But before we enter into the discussion, I would like to hopefully help to clarify some of the key definitions and clarifications. And then we take most of the time really for a working session. We would like to have your input into contributing towards the goals of the working group, and also, as you can see again in the collaborative notes, more at the bottom, you can even sign up to be part of working streams that we have in this group setup. So with that, just as I said, a brief overview of the working group objectives and planned outcomes and the working streams. So here are the objectives. The first is to collect and review existing vocabularies, terminologies, schemas, etc., for the material sciences and cognate domains. So chemistry, in particular, is also in focus. Then to propose and verify best practices for material science practitioners to improve FAIR data based on terminologies, schemas, and ontologies. Okay, so first look at, what are the vocabularies, terminologies that we have? Then how can they be best used to improve the FAIR data practices in the field? And then what the next one is, what can we do to harmonize the terminologies and schema in the material sciences, and demonstrating, of course, all of this in some case studies. These objectives are reflected in 3 planned outputs. One is this review and FAIR maturity assessment of the semantic artifacts in the field. Here we would like to produce a documentation of the process of FAIR maturity review and application and elaboration of semantic resources of the domain. Then the best practice recommendations for practitioners in the field to improve FAIR data based on terminologies, schemas, ontologies documented, including how to apply the FAIR principles within the context of publishing semantic artifacts in the domains of this working group. So applying the FAIR principles, both in terms of the data documentation, but also the premise of the group is that we can only achieve that if the metadata and the semantic artifacts that are used as a reference in the FAIR data are themselves FAIR, right? So it's about FAIR semantics as well. And then we also would like to elaborate new harmonized semantic artifacts, in particular terminologies and schema required to improve FAIR maturity in the working group. So if you go into the case statement, one of the items in particular we highlight is that when we do FAIR data, we need to improve, or what is the issue in the field is there is a lack of when it says in the FAIR data that you need a common metadata schema, common metadata and common terminologies to annotate the data, then we have a huge variety and also often a lack of available resources of this kind. And the other thing that to mention is that why we're doing this group is that there are a lot of initiatives in different countries and regions in the world that have done a lot of work in this field, but then that can also lead to, almost too many options and too many approaches. So it would be good to have an RDA best recommendation and output and recommendation output for the whole field, so that we can better collaborate in this way. And this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do it in 4 streams. You will see the indication on the field of participating in 2 of them. The reason is that the first 2 are starting now, and then C and D are starting in about month 6. So we will have the next plenary, or we'll have time then to join these groups, and they in particular C then also uses the output already from the first streams. The first streams, A and B, are this collection, review, and fair maturity assessment, and the best practices for material science practitioners to achieve fair data based on terminology, schema, and ontologies. And this is also the key things that we want to discuss today, and we have done a little bit of background work to which you then can contribute. So here are the streams again in more detail. You can search existing. We want to search existing semantic artifacts and search and collect existing best practices. So this is what we've been already doing, and this is what we will come to now to get also your input. The review of related the other thing is that there are a number of groups that are, of course, very important in our field, and I've already mentioned some in the kind of historical introduction, but in particular materials and chemistry, but there's also fair digital object fabric and the vocabulary services, which are absolutely essential and have done a lot of work that we need to take into account, as well as data discovery paradigms, and a number of working groups, some of which, again, I have mentioned, but here the fair data maturity model is important, fair sharing, metadata standards, and so on. I mentioned that there are a lot of initiatives, and this is why we're doing this, also collecting work. And here are some. Again, you will find a number of them in the case statement. They are located in the different world region, in particular in Europe, in the US, Americas, in the Asian countries, but also then specifically in some of the countries. There's in Germany a lot of initiatives, in Japan, in Korea, and so on. But if you know of any, please add initiatives that are relevant in the input document in the collaborative notes. We have collected some existing services, so the Materials Resource Registry, Materials Data Factory. Then there are a number of portals based on the portal technologies that are also used in other fields like agriculture, bio, and so on. There are now 2 relevant portals for ontologies in the materials field. There are terminology services, metadata standards catalog, fair sharing semantic assets. For material science, the Korean Materials Data Station, the database and data repository vocabulary at NIMS, and again, many more. Please add ones that you would highlight and would like us to have a look at. So here we would like to now as I already indicated a number of times, get some input from you. I also should check roughly where we are in time. I think we are reasonably in time at the moment. And you can do this here with a Menti. So please, add your your points into this document, and so that we can then also share that. So this is an open collection opportunity for you to enter.
Gerhard, I think it might be easier for me to share my screen for now.
Yes, maybe you can share it, and then I
Yeah,
can.
just for the mentee very briefly, and then I will give you back your rights.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Let me try. Sorry for the delay. Okay.
Yeah, there you have some.
Yeah, and you can also scan the QR code directly. Let's try with an easy one. Or was that the difficult one? Let's see. Banana. Best fruit if you ask me. Most efficient. Okay, nice. Got it. All very, very good options. Okay, just a bit more time and then. Nice. Okay, so I think we can move on. It does get more difficult as I proceed. Last chance. Okay, so let's move to the second question.
A little more difficult. Yeah, thanks also for the link for the slide deck, and again in the chat. Of course, you can refer to the organizations that are working on that in there, but also in the link on the case statement. But also don't feel restricted or having to read this first. So it doesn't matter if you put in stuff that we already have that may not be, you know, that's fine. You know, just put in the organize, you know, the things that are important to you or that you know from your field. Doesn't matter whether we already have them or not.
Okay. Anyone else? So Gerhard, perhaps we can proceed with the next one.
Yeah,
Okay. Everyone,
let's
okay.
move on. Mhm.
One more. So what are the major efforts and services in the field?
We move on to the next.
Okay, so finally we have open questions and comments. So any reactions so far? Alternatively, oh, there we go. You can also upvote. So Gerhard, would you like to address those now, or shall we collect them and revisit?
Yeah, well, we could just go through them briefly. I'm not sure how I can, actually, to be honest, how I can see all of them, or as it shows.
So this is the first one. So would it
Yeah.
be useful to have schema.org material schema for data annotations?
Yeah, this is one of the areas that we want to discuss in terms of the work streams. And I guess we could also add these questions maybe to the collaborative note. But also already here an indication by kind of voting maybe would be useful. And then the next one was are we going to attract the main experts to join and follow the activities? That's a very good question. Spread the word, but also I think what we want to do here is that by having some demonstration case. Yeah, so to make it more real, as it were. Yeah, if you have demonstration cases, I guess this is also something that we should mention, and please add them to the collaborative notes. You know, these types of cases that need to be, yeah, that would showcase all the issues, the difficulties, and how they could be addressed. I think that's a very general RDA question. But yeah, participation in RDA and coordinate. The main thing is really via the via the different interest groups. So we do plan to continue having not just working group meetings, but also representation of the working group, maybe in sessions of different interest groups in the future. Let's say if there's a vocabulary services, chemistry, etc., and of course materials interest group sessions, then to have at least a short update within those sessions, and what to reach the wider community while we're working. Yeah. But yes, I mean, I'm just saying my things, but add your comments on the in the collaborative notes, please. There is there are criteria that we are going to, I mean, we are going to review. You know, we're not necessarily not coming up with really starting from scratch. I mean, we are reviewing fair semantic criteria, and in fact, we can discuss exactly also on this point some of those criteria in this session, and certainly we're going to do it in the stream. The question is more about I guess the details of the criteria. You know, there are criteria about fair semantics, and there's you know, fair semantics assessments, and also if you look at some of the portals, even have integration of fair assessments for the semantic assets that get deposited. But that still leaves some of the more detailed questions that the materials practitioner would have somewhat outstanding. You know, for example, you would say you should use a certain repository. You know, should use repositories or commonly used common metadata. You know, widely used. So then the question is, okay, what is that repository? What are these common metadata that I should use? Yeah. So to going from the more general criteria to the practical criteria is more rather than coming up with criteria. That's my view here. I don't know. I will have to remind myself about this acronym. Please come in.
Cross-disciplinary interoperability framework, I guess, as part of World Fair. Maybe. Please also feel free to unmute and join in. This is always an option, of course. So is this it? Because I have many acronyms in my head, and I do tend to mix them up.
So which say again?
Cross-disciplinary interoperability framework.
Oh yeah. That must
be part of the
yes.
of the World Fair.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Good point. Yes. There is. Yeah, it's a very good point, and I thought that as well. Actually, I did. Yeah, I mean, I'm not really fully taking part in the World Fair, but I heard some of the presentations exactly when it was introduced in Salzburg. Yes, thank you, Heike. Yes, exactly. And I thought this is very relevant when I heard about it. But actually, I mean, this is something definitely we should discuss and see how we can use it. Yeah. Good question. What does success look like from a practical point of view? How will research activities be transformed? Is a very good question, yes. But of course, the success, in my view, it would be it's probably hard to, for us hard to measure, but it should increase the FAIR score of FAIR data and the participation with, in that, basically more FAIR data, higher FAIR score, and achieving that with less effort in a way, less head scratching about, how do I do it? So when you're a researcher doing that, then being clearer about what to do and how to do it. Yeah.
If I add something more, I think if we succeed in to build a harmonized terminology and schema, then I think it will stimulate the world effort, global effort, to build a kind of a federated database for the big material science research data. I think that would be very important impact of this working group. So some federation to share the data in the around the world will be possible. I have some comment about the question 2, how to attract the material, the domain expert into this effort. So I think this working group can stimulate interest in material scientists, actually. So one thing we should do is to let them know. So we are doing this kind of effort to make some harmonized terminology and schema for the material science research data. So I think the one way to do that is, so we should do some meeting, or this kind of meeting in the material science conference, for example, MRS, or some conference in European MRS or MRS, or the kind of a big material science conference, so that the material scientists should know this effort, and they would be willing to join this effort. I believe so.
So if there are no other immediate reactions, perhaps we can proceed.
Yep.
Gerhard, and then I will also make sure to copy those into the collaborative notes with your reactions that I have been tracking. Okay, so let me stop share. Okay. And the floor is yours again.
Let's then pick up here. Yeah. Sorry. One moment. I want to move this to. We would like to just review some of the work. I mean, we have already been discussing that now here a little bit, and yeah, I have this. There's a Google Doc which you can also access. So we obviously add things that you have been mentioning to that, but also these are the best practice recommendations that we already collected. So there are best practices for fair vocabularies in ontologies on the web, for example. So these are more very generic recommendations, and also about scientific metadata from Helmholtz, for example. But then also if we go down, we have some reviews in the chemistry field about ontologies, and also in the materials science field about ontologies. And we have the Gold Book reference. And then here there is the recommendations from the FAIR project about fair semantics that are very important here as criteria. And then in terms of services and collections for semantic artifacts, we again collected a number of things such as the map portal, industry portal, GitHub's, the terminology services that are existing, but there is a number of, this is by no means complete. And so this is work that will then be happening, and we can add to that as well. And then, of course, also key individual artifacts should also be added. Just to clarify some of the key definitions. So, of course, we have the fair data principles. I will not go through all of them, but just to remind you and ourselves about those principles, and that there are, these detailed indicators for them, and that within those, our efforts are about the metadata, terminologies, and semantics, so vocabularies. So, for example, this comes in here about metadata use vocabularies that follow the FAIR principles. Yeah. So this is then what is the key part of what we're looking at. We need for this domain vocabularies that follow the FAIR principles, and we need to identify those and how to use them. But also in the reusability for FAIR data, then we have that metadata are richly described with a what we said, a plurality of accurate and relevant attributes. So what are these attributes? And then the metadata meet domain relevant community standards. So these are very general, but when we have metadata, what are the materials domain relevant community standards for the metadata? We have FAIR data, and then also we want to have these semantic assets being fair. So the material semantic assets are really the focus of this group. So here we have the FAIR data and the semantic assets, and then when you look at FAIR data, there is also the FAIR implementation profile, which is a very useful and practical way that has been recommended and is now in sort of discussions and implementations. It's also part of the World Fair initiatives that are using this and so on. So this is the question whether we should have something like that for materials semantic assets, and also what are the difficulties that you encounter when using this for the materials data sets. So as I said before, it's in the implementation of these recommendations for our field. So these two questions, so again, the first one was, okay, I want to use the FAIR implementation profile for materials. How do I do that? The second one, this type of approach for the semantic assets themselves could be useful. So a template like that for semantic assets in materials could also be very useful. When we talk about semantic assets, I'm sure most of you are aware of that. So it's basically just a reminder here that there are different types of semantic assets. Some have a lower and some a higher so-called expressivity or semantic interoperability. So it starts from just sets of terms to sets of terms with definitions, to rich descriptions of all of the concepts and relationships amongst each other, using different types of languages and levels of expressivities and logic in the end as well. So description logic, for example, here for our ontologies. Schema are machine actionable descriptions of a document that describe the content, structure, and constraints and enable validation of a document of that type. And schema themselves have been very, very successful in, of course, driving the World Wide Web. And there's the schema.org, which is very widely used and could also be something that, as we have had in the questions, that could be useful for our field. So the outcomes that we would like is to improve the FAIR maturity. So we have these semantic assets that have high expressivity, like ontologies, or lower expressivity, like vocabularies. They can be fair or not fair in themselves, and what we want to ensure is that they are fair so that they can be actually used for FAIR data. So now we would like to have your input, back to the collaborative notes here that we would like to see. This is just loading here, I think, but I can also go to a different section. So please provide your input in the collaborative notes on the questions. Who else is working on this? That we've already started collecting. This is really a lot of things that we have here, but please add more. What are the major efforts in services in the field? Then we have the questions from the Menti session that we just had now, and then we added these other questions. What makes a semantic asset findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable? In your views, what are the key things? And then I highlighted in the slides, we have this question for that how can we work in material science? So according to the FAIR indicators, we should have a vocabulary that fulfills the role of metadata use vocabularies that follow the FAIR principles and metadata meet domain relevant community standards. So now, okay, now you have a data set. Imagine, your case, you have a data set. You want to then say, okay, I want to satisfy these indicators. So, okay, so I need this vocabulary. Where do you look? What should it be like? What are the key things you are looking for to enable that? And then we have a section for open discussion. So of course, these are just some questions and pointers, but there are many more. And please add any of these down there. Let's just add one, which comes up in the in the FAIR data. So I should.
So there's a lot of activity going on in the collaborative document, so many thanks for that. Please also feel free to unmute and share your thoughts, comments. I saw there was already some contributions in the open discussion. So perhaps we could address those, Gerhard? You agree, or focus also on the stream participation for the people that are interested?
Thank you. It's a lot of things, which is really great. And I just thought, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of activity. Thanks a lot, everyone, for your contributions.
Yeah, and in the open discussions, yeah, I mean the second one, the checklist, I think is a good one. But there are basically also like these assessment tools, and there is fair maturity type of or recommendations in that report that I will share this screen now. So in this one, I think that's pretty good. But if you have others, then so it's kind of these types of list. Ontology mappings within and between MSE connected domains. There are already multiple ontologies in use, yeah, that are not really compatible with each other. Yes, yes. I mean, I usually come. I mean, with there are the questions here about the ontology mapping and the improve that. There was some work which we also have in the I will just trying to find it. there was some work which was done in a project called Ontocommons that and we did some work on something called bridge concepts. Maybe I should add that. I will add that here as well. So the idea was that if one had some terms that are core terms of the field that are really very richly documented in terms of all of the sources for the kind of definitions, elucidations, and so on of that term, how that term is used in different other in different ontologies, and how the different uses of that term relate to each other. Then if a few of these bridges exist, it helps to connect things, and it helps to at least have, one a small set of really commonly understood things, and also within that document, one can elaborate. Of course, if there are always somewhat different interpretations of a term, and that can be elaborated in that, but that would be kind of the reference to help tie things together. So it was one attempt of dealing with this plurality of our usage of terminology, and similarly, I mean, it's more of I guess what I was looking for in general, what I would find helpful is to focus on a relatively small number of things, such as when you look as the other example at the other end was always schema.org, that has just a metadata schema, and sometimes only a few terms and relations that are then very, very widely used. If we already go to a lot of domain ontologies and so on, then it can be, they are of course important, and we need to make sure that they are in themselves fair. That's part of what we're doing. But it will never be possible to determine, a complete ontology of the field that everyone will use. Yeah. What else do we have? But yes, also this is, I think, very important. The standard procedure. Yeah. Yeah. And demonstrate that. Mm-hmm. CFO probably means compliant. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this talks to the same issue. You know, you have different top-level ontologies that was aimed to be addressed here, but with this bridge and some of that work that is here, and yeah, there are other references within this Onto-Commons framework that aims to deal with the fact that different top-level ontologies are used in the field. So we will not and cannot and are not aiming to achieve an interoperability between them, but have strong recommendations as shown here about terminologies that can be used, mapping procedures, and so on. I think that's kind of the direction. Mm. Yeah, also I added a couple of questions here that come from this reference here about, you know, the list of, you know, fair maturity for semantic assets. So it recommends, for example, semantic assets and its content should be published in an appropriate semantic repository. And of course, we have, I mean, that refers then back to what are the existing repositories. So this is why this is important. And I think we, and in the stream, should come up with the recommendations that give, you know, further detail on this indicator for our field. What are then the ones that we want to use? There's another point that's more general in the indicators for semantic assets, is that there is a lack, which we cannot address here, but, you know, there is a lack of a common API for these repositories. So so we have the issue that even if they are semantic artifacts are published in repositories, you would have to go to each one separately to look for them. to search. You cannot search across the different repositories because they use different technologies, and there is no common API agreement between them, which makes this point about being more selective for the field more important, so that you don't have to search through too many different repositories for finding appropriate semantic assets. And the other is on the serialization. So what level of serialization is recommended? So so if you have, how is it? The semantic asset, there are the different ones that we showed, they're from the vocabularies that maybe is SCOS to description logic, ontologies, which is very high level of expressivity. Is there a recommendation for that? And then, of course, there are recommendations already in terms of what the semantic asset should, what annotations there should be. But again, what is the level of annotation? Each one, if you have an ontology, it has its own. There are different recommendations for that, but at least I think whatever the level is, there should be for example, an elucidation and an example and a reference for the background that led to this elucidation or something like that. Yeah. So clearly just having terms is not enough. Some kind of what is usually called definition, but it's kind of an elucidation of what that term means, of the concept itself, not just the term, is important. But there are, if we had recommendations that work best for our field, then that would also help. So we are coming to the last few minutes. We have a few people signed up, but we will also get to the other points in the chat that I haven't missed anything. Yeah, the RDA website at the moment isn't fully. I mean, it's still kind of in transition a little bit. So, but I think you can sign up to the working group. The case statement is still in the archive, but also then I assume there will be more of the functionalities of discussion and just putting up the streams in this new site and so on will be possible going forward.
Thank you, Gerhard. I also shared the link to the chat. Yes, indeed, the new website is very much still in transition, unfortunately, but the signing up option works. And if you sign up, you will receive all announcements, the meeting links to join the working group meetings and all that. So make sure that you are signed up, and the rest will follow. The last bits and pieces very soon.
Yeah, we have not scheduled stream meetings yet, but of course, with the people signed up, we will inform about that, and it will be, I guess, the usual combination of offline using this Google Docs and so on, and working on things together. So everyone will be notified and can contribute in that way. but of course we will have meetings of the stream set up as well. And yeah, thank you so much for your participation, especially, I mean, yeah, we've gathered quite a few points here in the document already in this session. And yeah, are there any, I mean, more sort of general questions about the group, about how we work, about, yeah, any other comments? But if that's not the case, then we can close in good time, also for everyone to join other sessions or other activities, meetings, and so on. And I would like, yeah, to thank my co-chairs and Athena and the RDA and all of you for participating.
So thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
Gerhard. Thanks a lot, everyone, for being so active. I've also posted in the chat the link to the repeat session in case you would like to participate again or forward to a colleague that couldn't join us today. So please feel free to do that. And yes, many thanks, everyone. Enjoy
Thank
the
you.
rest of the plenary. Goodbye.
Look forward to our work.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much.
So I'm just going to end the meeting and we will exit now. Thanks a lot,
Okay.
everyone. We will
Thank
follow
you.
up via email. Bye.